On Tech News Today, Google is getting into the insurance business. Evernote is getting into the document scanning business, and we'll show you the first fake Apple Watch coming out of China. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, January 9th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by NatureBox. NatureBox ships great-tasting snacks right to your door. Start snacking smarter with wholesome, delicious treats like roasted Peruvian corn kernels. To get your complimentary NatureBox sampler, visit naturebox.com/twit. That's naturebox.com/twit. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Welcome to the show. I'm Mike Elgan, and with us as co-anchor is Mashable senior tech analyst Christina Warren. How you doing, Christina?
I'm great. I'm not at CES, so I'm not very tired, which is awesome. And it's very cold in New York, but it's warm in this office, so that's good.
That is good. And I know that you've been following everything happening at CES.
Absolutely.
What are some of the most surprising or exciting or interesting things you've seen coming out of the show?
Well, it's been an interesting show this year, I think, because there haven't been a ton of really big announcements, but there's been some great stuff on the auto side, I think, happening. And so there's been some really interesting things with self-driving cars and self-parking cars, and kind of this longer-term vision for the connected home and I hate the term, but I'm going to use it, the Internet of Things. Last time I say that, I swear. 4K finally seems like it's coming into its own this year, which is great to see.
So the Internet of Things everybody's talking about it, but it's really not there yet. I think that next year's CES or maybe the year after that is going to be real. It's going to be a real category. The quantified self was the sort of the belle of the ball like last year, maybe the year before. But I've noticed a new trend, and I wrote a column about this for Computer World that's coming out tomorrow, but the trend is the combination of the two, which I'm calling the Internet of Self. And it's essentially
yes.
where you take quantified self data and you use it to control Internet of Things devices. One example is that there's a light bulb that was shown at CES that simulates a sunrise. It uses the sunrise-like colors and gradually becomes brighter based on your sleep cycle. So when you're ending a sleep cycle and it's time for you to wake up in terms of your body's biology, it will turn on the light. Another example, which wasn't at the show, is that Volvo's working on detection to detect your face and see if you're falling asleep. And the ultimate goal of this is that when it sees that you're nodding off behind the wheel, it will automatically go into an autopilot mode, pull over, and park the car. I have the feeling there is going to be tons of these kinds of things where you just imagine the possibilities. The thing that's great about it is that the quantified self is real and the Internet of Things is going to be real. And all you need to make the Internet of Self happen is an app. That's it. The data is there. The devices are there. And so I really think this is going to be like one of the coolest, I guess you'd call it a category, where your body's biology is controlling devices in your environment.
No, I think that's a great point. And I think that's the sort of stuff that people will actually see value in both of these categories. Whereas individually, quantified self, and this is a term I hate too, you can see some of that stuff and people like to track, their number of, calories they've burned or how far they've walked or things like that, or their sleep cycles. And that's interesting data. But being able to actually use that in a real way to control things, in your environment, like the Internet of Things, I think gives both of those an additional value. So I think you're onto something there. And I like your Internet of Self acronym there. iOS, I guess it would be.
Yeah, iOS. That's not right. I think Apple already owns that one.
I think we already have that one.
All right. Well,
we'll come up with something, but no, that's good though.
Yeah. All right, and we'll look for that category as it emerges eventually. Well, let's jump into the news. Google is donating €250,000, roughly $300,000 to support the French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo in the wake of a terrorist attack on the publication Wednesday that killed 12. The publication has about 30,000 paid subscribers and a weekly print run of about 60,000 copies. Google's contribution is part of a wider effort to enable Charlie Hebdo to print 1 million copies of the next issue. Google's contribution bolsters $1.2 million from the French government and $150,000 from the Guardian Media Group. French media groups like Le Monde, France Televisions, and Radio France are trying to match Google's donation. And a crowdfunding campaign has raised more than 100,000 euros. In related news, an Algerian man named Rakid Nakaz, who grew up in France but gave up his French citizenship because of what he believed were anti-Muslim policies, has offered to buy Charlie Hebdo magazine to keep it afloat. And I think this is a really interesting dynamic here. It's kind of the terrorist version, Christina Warren, of the Streisand effect. Essentially, these terrorists wanted to shut down Charlie Hebdo. And what they've done instead is they got themselves killed. That happened this morning. Police killed both of the suspects that were at large. And they've got a lot of attention, a lot of funding for Charlie Hebdo. And so it looks like the opposite of their goal is actually happening. And that warms my heart. What do you think of this whole story?
It warms my heart as well, because this story has been a terrible thing to see. You know, you and I, we've talked a lot about freedom of speech before, and it becomes kind of contentious in some ways when that speech is uncomfortable. But that's exactly the sort of speech that needs protection the most, is that we don't necessarily agree with, or that can be offensive. And I think it's great that all these media groups and that Google is getting in the fray and supporting this. I think that, you know, the goal of having, you know, taking this very small circulation magazine and increasing it to 1 million copies is a fantastic way to kind of really show that these types of attacks can't shut down speech. As terrible as they are and as horrific as the violence is, they can't shut down free speech. And it warms my heart as well.
And for those not familiar with Charlie Hebdo, this is a publication that satirizes, using cartoons, everything and everyone. They go after the Pope. They go after Israel. They go after every controversial issue you can imagine. They're racist in some cases. They're really, really offensive. And again, as you intimated, Christina, you know, offensive or objectionable speech that's objectionable to someone is the only kind of speech that actually needs to be protected. You don't need to protect speech that everybody wants to hear. And so, you know, that's kind of an interesting thing. Yesterday, I realized that you can actually subscribe in the United States to Charlie Hebdo on Amazon.com. It costs $186 or something like that plus tax. And I did so. So I'm going to be subscribing to this publication. I expect my first print copy to arrive in the mailbox in about 6 weeks. And I'm doing it as a protest against terrorism and also to support the magazine. But as we heard from this story, it looks like they're not going to need my support. They're getting lots of support from everywhere else. Well, in just a sec, we're going to talk about a new story from Google, a new business for Google. But first, I want to tell you about NatureBox. NatureBox is a subscription, a snack service, and we love it here at TWiT because it's healthy food. You know, getting healthier is really not that hard. You just need to do a few things. Exercise a little bit more, stop drinking all those calories, sugary beverages and so on. And when you snack on real food. Their snacks have 0 artificial flavors, 0 artificial colors, no artificial sweeteners, 0 grams of trans fat, and no high fructose corn syrup. And some of their snacks even have 0 sweeteners of any kind, and also some of them are gluten-free. You'll even find incredibly bold flavors like chocolate banana chips, Kung Pao pretzels, and lemon pucker pistachios. Some of their snacks are spicy, some are sweet, some are salty. But whatever your favorite types of snacks are, you'll get them from NatureBox because they have literally hundreds of different types of snacks. So start your trial today. Get a complimentary sampler box at naturebox.com/twit. You'll have to pay only the $2 for shipping. Stay full, stay strong, start snacking smarter, and go to naturebox.com/twit. And we thank NatureBox for their support of Tech News Today. Google is planning to launch a shopping site for car insurance, according to a Forrester analyst, Ellen Carney. A site called Google Compare Auto Insurance Services would sell insurance policies directly to consumers. Rolfe Winkler is a reporter for the Wall Street Journal and joins us now to talk about the story. Hey, Rolfe, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, thanks. Now, Google would sell the insurance, but would they actually be the insurance company?
No. And we don't know exactly what this is going to look like for starters. What Ms. Carney found, which was very interesting, was that Google is now licensed to sell insurance in 26 states in the United States. And also an executive at Google is signed on herself to sell insurance through a comparison shopping site, a startup based in San Francisco, which suggests that those two companies are going to be working together. Separately, another sources tell me that another comparison shopping site for insurance called Compare Now, that first one is called CoverHound. This other one is called Compare Now. That is also going to be working with Google on some insurance-like site. Now, what we do know is that Google already does this in the UK. They bought a company in the UK And right now, what you can do, it's basically a vertical search engine. If you want to search for car insurance, put in your registration number for your vehicle, give them some more information, and they can bring you a quote for car insurance. So it's basically a vertical specialized search engine. And that's what you can probably expect to see here in the United States at some point.
So, I mean, as you said, they're doing this in Europe, and it looks like they're going to be partnering with some startups to kind of do this, and they'll be, you know, selling insurance, but they won't be the insurer. What's the real upside for Google here? Is it just to take, you know, just to kind of get the commission here, or to kind of become the destination source for insurance? I mean, I know that the insurance industry traditionally takes up a humongous amount of advertising, you know, on television, on radio, and I assume online too. Is that something that they would hope to then be able to maybe funnel into their search results? And I'm trying to kind of understand why they even want to be in this business.
Well, to be clear, it's probably going to be an extension almost of their existing business, right? So let's look at what they're doing for a couple of their other very important categories: shopping results and hotel bookings, right? These happen to be two of the most lucrative kinds of searches you can do on Google. Priceline by itself probably spends between $1 and $2 billion a year buying advertising on Google. Basically, to get you, when you're searching for a hotel, it's really profitable. They want to be the place you go for a hotel, right? So what Google is doing now is it's not only selling keywords exactly. So in the hotel vertical, when you search for a hotel, there's now basically a vertical search type tool in Google that looks a lot like, you guessed it, TripAdvisor or Priceline or any of these sites, where what you do when you're searching for a hotel is you don't give them a keyword, you give them a city, and then you give them dates you want to check in and check out, and they give you hotel results directly, right? Google now does the same thing with a tool called Hotel Finder. Now, that tool has a different kind of advertisement on it. It's called a hotel price ad. And basically, after you've put in your dates and you put in your city, Google will give you a list of hotels, and you can say, book now for $107 a night, and that little button you can press, right? And you can book the hotel, and it'll take you to Priceline where you book it, for instance. In shopping, right? Another very important category for them. In shopping now, what you see are these things called product listing ads, which basically make the Google search page look a lot like Amazon, which again is a vertical search site for shopping. So what Google is doing is basically taking its search engine and evolving it from the it's always been about 10 blue links on a search page, but it's evolving it into specialized results for people who know what they want and know that they want to do research. They don't want to click back and forth from a link to a site and then back to a Google search page and back to another site and enter a lot of information in every different site in order to get back an insurance quote. What if Google could just take all that information up front and spit the quotes back to you right away? Sort of the way it would spit back product results, Nike shoes in a Google shopping search, or a room in New York at the W Hotel, right? So
and then maybe be able to sell, a sponsored link or a highlighted offering from a certain insurance provider for a certain state.
There's a possibility that there could be some sort of commission model here too. Who knows?
Now, Rolfe, you wrote that Google also handles mortgage quotes and credit cards in the UK. Is there any indication that that could happen in the U.S. as well? I mean, you can imagine getting your credit card from Google and then using that credit card to book a hotel from Google and get some insurance, some travel insurance before you go to New York. So do you think that's going to happen?
Well, what they do, so right now there's this, if you go, your viewers can just open up a, I'm not telling them to do this now because they're watching Twit, but when they're done watching Twit, they should go open a Google browser and just type in Google compare credit cards. And what you'll see, or if you type in compare credit cards, there'll be a little widget inside the Google search result that allows you to compare. It gives you a menu of credit card offers, and you get to search based, do you want cash back? Do you want a low APR? Do you want all these various options? And it'll spit back, here are the 5 credit cards that fit the criteria that you're looking for. So it's a specialized search engine for that is in the UK, but that also exists in the United States.
Rolfe Winkler is at WSJ.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Rolfe Winkler. Thanks for joining us, Rolfe.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, it looks like the cybersecurity bill is about to make a comeback in Congress. The Hill's Cory Bennett reports that a senior Democrat, Dutch Ruppersberger, I guess is how you pronounce his name, will reintroduce today the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act, also known as CISPA. Cory Bennett joins us now. How are you doing, Cory?
Doing well, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Now, why does he want to reintroduce a bill that already failed in the Senate, and why now?
And not only did it fail in the Senate, excuse me, it's failed the last couple of years they've tried to introduce it. This bill goes back several years, back to at least 2012. And I think the reason, though, is that we are riding this event right now where there is so much attention on Capitol Hill to cybersecurity because of the Sony hack. And he said that very directly when I talked to him yesterday. He said, he wants to capitalize on events that are going on in the world. If you look at the situations he's introducing it under, they're not ideal. He is going it alone without his former co-sponsor, former House Intelligence Chairman Mike Rogers, who is now retired from Congress. Excuse me, battling a bit of a cold here. And he also is no longer in his very powerful position of ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee. He was term limited out after last Congress and was not able to get another extension. So he's going it alone here and hoping that his introducing the bill starts to spur some momentum and capitalize off of this Sony hack that is, continues to be in the news.
Right. So, I mean, obviously, he, as you said, and as he admitted, he's trying to ride this momentum from the attack. But how would CISPA have actually prevented such an attack to begin with? I mean, what would this bill have been able to do that would have prevented what the FBI is still saying was North Korea infiltrating Sony systems?
Yeah, and another aspect of the Sony hack that's interesting is that prior to it, people were very united in that a cyber info sharing bill was the top agenda. That was top on the industry group's priority list. It was top for a lot of lawmakers. They weren't able to get it through last Congress, obviously. But the Sony hack has actually in some ways changed the conversation. It's refocused the cyber conversation to many other issues that aren't related to information sharing. And from the people I've talked to, and I think perhaps even government officials would acknowledge, information sharing and this bill specifically would not have prevented the Sony hack. It's more that it has raised attention to these type of issues and not necessarily that we can pass one bill, lawmakers say, that will stop any individual attack. But in some senses, you might think that the Sony hack has actually lessened the chance of an information sharing bill, going through, because it has somewhat shifted the conversation to looking at geopolitical issues, free speech issues, obviously. It's kind of refocused the cyber debate a bit.
It has, and it's true. It's true about Congress that they never want to. If people are scared about something, they never want to waste that. They always want to jump on that fear and get something passed that they wanted to pass anyway. And one dimension of this, which I think is underappreciated, and we could really use some help from Congress on this, is the Sony hack showed that employees of a company are extremely vulnerable to being exploited from the horrible security of the companies themselves. I mean, it's pretty clear that Sony just had a very lackadaisical approach to security, and they'll recover. Sony's going to be fine. They're not going anywhere. But who's really going to suffer is all these Sony employees who have their stuff all over the place. Of course, there's a class action lawsuit out there, but I think they need more help. I think that companies have a responsibility to protect the personal information of their employees, and I think that Congress should help with that. But of course, CISPA won't help with that at all, will it?
Exactly. It's worth noting that CISPA relates to critical infrastructure companies, and certainly a movie studio does not fall under the umbrella of critical infrastructure. That's more energy companies, transportation companies, things like a nuclear reactor, that would be critical infrastructure. And CISPA would not apply to this. Certainly, Congress has taken up these other issues. They've looked at federalizing data security notification laws, data breach notification laws, as well as looking at federal data security minimal standards laws that they would pass. But for a lot of talk last year, nothing ever materialized, and certainly it doesn't appear to be the top priority this Congress. So unlikely that we will see movement there either.
You can follow Cory Bennett at thehill.com and on Twitter at Cory_Bennett with 2 T's at the end. Thank you so much for joining us, Cory.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Evernote today shipped a free new iOS app for scanning documents with an iPhone. It's called Scannable, and it was first announced in October. Tyler Hayes is an independent writer who covered the release for Fast Company, and he joins us now. How you doing, Tyler?
Hey, thanks for me.
Now, doesn't the regular Evernote app facilitate document scanning? Why do they need a dedicated app?
Yeah, so it seems like basically they're trying to get people scanning as quickly as possible, and so this standalone app you don't really have to even sign up to use it. You don't have to connect your Evernote account. You don't get text recognition inside images when you don't connect your Evernote account, but nobody ever has to connect to Evernote and get and do that type of stuff. So it makes it a lot quicker, and basically it's trying something new, I guess.
So how's this different from something like ScanBot? Or, there are a bunch of, I'm looking at my phone right now, and I've got like half a dozen various, scanning apps. What makes this one special?
Well, and so that's the thing I asked them when I talked to them, and it's not a whole lot different than something like ScanBot. What it does is it fills out Evernote's current capabilities, but Scannable does introduce some interesting things like when you do scan a business card, it recognizes that you would want to keep that as a contact, populates that in a specific way. If you connect your LinkedIn account, then it will pull in even more information with people's pictures and other contact information. And also, Evernote sells a hardware scanner, and so this app now will work as the software side on your mobile device. When you walk up to the hardware scanner, push the scan from the Snap Scan button, it will automatically feed all the documents that you put into the machine right onto your phone. And so if you're working in a multi-user office or something, then that's a lot easier to manage than connecting everybody's computers directly to the scanner.
Now, Evernote says that Scannable provides a magical experience. I'm quoting Evernote. Are they on drugs, or is this a really good user experience?
So the business card aspect of it is pretty neat, but beyond that, it is just a scanning app. They hinted that they would be recognizing other types of formats, and so like they have their notebook partnership with Moleskine, and then they have a partnership with 3M for Post-it notes, and so they apply special techniques when they scan certain types of formats. And so, if you can, you're scanning a receipt and then it can automatically pull out your numbers and somehow tally that up for expense report, then that might be something that they go into in the future. But they didn't say exactly where they're headed. But I would expect some kind of stuff in that realm.
You can find Tyler Hayes at listen.com. Listen is spelled with 2 I's together. And also on Twitter at Tyler H. Thanks for joining us, Tyler.
Thanks.
All right. Well, writing for the New York Times, Molly Oswaks talks about a new online medium for humor, sarcasm, and passive-aggressive venting. The medium is the URL itself. Molly joins us now to talk about it. How you doing, Molly?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Now, I've heard about people communicating with neighbors using like their Wi-Fi network names, and now people are doing something similar with URLs. Can you give us some examples from your article?
Some of my favorites came from BuzzFeed and XOJane. The editorial director of BuzzFeed, Jack Shepard, actually also had some great suggestions. One was for an article about keeping your pets healthy over Thanksgiving, and the URL was "Ditch that turkey skin, real good, son." Which is just, it's funny. It's sort of voicier. It's sort of also like, what does it mean? It urges you to click. Another great one came from XOJane about a woman who calls herself a monster for behavior of sort of assuming that every man she was friends with in college was her boyfriend. And the URL was "Crushed when I was a monster." So they're just like a little bit more interesting, funnier. They call them social URLs because it gets people sharing. It's especially when the internet is so saturated and all the websites are reporting on the same thing. This is motivation to click to that particular site's coverage of a certain story.
So first, disclosure, I have to admit that I do this all the time, at least when my editors let me. I mean, just this week I wrote a story about how Apple won CES without showing up, and the slug was Apple trolls CES. But what was most fascinating to me about this article was the fact that there's this whole hobby, there's this whole subculture of people who are obsessed about finding these URLs. Can you tell us about Dean Pretorius?
Yeah, I found him on Reddit. There, I just searched funny URLs. I searched social URLs, and what he came up with one that I think it was from Engadget about a device for monitoring your sexual activity, and the URL was Bandara Sex Fit, which I guess is the device. I used to be a serious journalist, and Dean himself is a media person. He's worked for Huffington Post before, and I think, especially if you're a media person, you see this humor. And so he shared it on Reddit. He said, I'm not laughing at the article, I'm laughing at the URL. So that's how I found him.
Now, you said that this is clickbait, and my view is, why not? I mean, a journalist who's trying to avoid a clickbait headline should be certainly allowed to have a clickbaity kind of URL. I mean, a URL isn't actual journalism, is it?
I guess it's sort of becoming that now. When I spoke to Dean Pretorius, what he was saying is sometimes if you have a joke or you have something else to say about the subject matter, as in the story that he linked to, but maybe you don't want to say it in the article because it just isn't good, PR for the company, or it's just not, you just don't want to say it in the article. The author of it issued sort of a mea culpa, his own meta commentary on what he was writing about, whether it was an assignment or a story he generated himself. So it's like a meta journalism. It's journalism about journalism, I guess it can be.
So here's my only question about this. I mean, you call these social URLs, and as I said, I'm guilty of doing this sort of thing myself, mostly to amuse myself and usually at the chagrin of my editors. But, when links are getting spread across on Facebook and on Twitter and other places, most of the time URL shortening services come into effect. And so you don't even see the URL necessarily unless you really kind of hover over and want to see what it expands to. So is this mainly being spread, through people kind of texting one another, posting on places like Reddit? I'm trying to understand the world we live in of shortened URLs, how, a really clever slug can go viral.
You're exactly right, Christina. And some that I found, which actually didn't end up making it into the story, were people who take just the end of the URL, the permalink. So, for instance, the Engadget one would be Bandara Sex Fit, I used to be a serious journalist, and they paste not as a link, but just as a string of words and dashes, the end of the URL, as a sort of no comment joke about this, because as you said, Facebook and Twitter, they're shortening the URLs now, so you can't see them. So people are finding ways to get them in anyway.
Molly Oswaks is at mollyoswaks.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Molly Oswaks. Thank you so much for joining us, Molly.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, Mashable's Karissa Bell bought something at CES that everybody wants, an Apple Watch. And it really wasn't all that expensive either. Karissa joins us now to show and tell. How you doing, Karissa?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Now, I have the feeling that Apple may not have made your new Apple Watch. Who sold it to you, and how much did it cost?
They did not. It's a Chinese company called Hyperdin, and it was $27. And they were in the back of the show. There's a section where it's all like smaller companies that are based out of Asia, and that's where I found it.
Now, tell us about the process of buying this, Karissa, because when we were talking yesterday, this was the most fascinating part to me. First of all, you're not supposed to sell anything on the CES floor. Like, that's against the rules. But these people clearly are not about following the rules if they're ripping off the Apple Watch so blatantly. But tell us about how you bought this and what. Talk about the lady with the sunglasses.
Sure. So, first of all, I actually didn't know you weren't supposed to buy things.
We won't tell anyone.
Yeah. So she was showing this to me, and I'm just, my first thought was, I have to have this. So I asked her how much it was, and I asked her if I could buy it, and she said yes. And, I asked her if I could pay with the credit card, and she gave me this look that was hilarious. And then going to an ATM, this woman, she's wearing sunglasses the whole time, and she goes, okay. And, Christina, who's taking photos of it, said, okay, I'll wait here while you go to the ATM. And then I came back and she said, oh, well, it's actually $30. So
like a swap meet.
Yeah. And I said, so I was like, wait, you said it was 27. She said, no, it's a wholesale price. So I managed to talk her back down to the 27. She gave it to me, and I'm now the proud owner of smartwatch that looks like an Apple Watch.
That's wonderful. Now, your smartwatch actually paired and work with your iPhone 6. What can you do with this combination?
So you can do, so I can play music through the watch. That actually works. If I get a phone call, the watch does ring, although if you answer it, I don't think it actually has a microphone on it, so I've not actually been able to like use it as for phone calls. And that's about it. There are like, and there's like a pedometer and a stopwatch, which like sort of work, and there's a clock that does not work.
And does it have a touch screen? Does the touch screen work? Or
it does have a touch screen. It works like okay, it's
$27.
I guess, yeah.
How do you even buy a touchscreen itself, just the part, as a manufacturer for $27? That's pretty astounding. Now, you're going through the list of features. What is the anti-lost feature?
Okay, so I figured out what this is. If you enable it, it will send you an alert like when you get out of Bluetooth range. So if I get up and walk away from my phone, it just starts vibrating, letting me know that I lost the Bluetooth connection.
Okay, so everybody, did you have the watch with you right now that you can show us, or is it off on the show floor?
I do. No, I have it right here.
All right, we'll show it to the camera because we all want to see this.
There it is. Brilliant sound system too.
It does. It sounds fantastic. Yeah. So $27. How much do you think you could get for that on eBay? Because right now, my Twitter feed, everybody's talking about this is like the best reason to go to CES is to get the fake Apple Watch. People want this thing badly. So would you be willing to sell this on eBay?
I don't think I could part with it. I feel like this is all the things I've accumulated during CES. I feel like this is the best one. So yeah, it's not for sale.
I'm with you. I think this, to me, was my favorite story of the entire CES. My favorite thing that Mashable did the entire time we were there was you buying the $27 fake watch. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Love it.
Well, let this be a lesson to all journalists who go to CES. The best stuff is always in the dark and unfashionable corners, sold by women with sunglasses. So something to keep in mind. Karissa Bell is at Mashable.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at KarissaBE. Thank you for joining us, Karissa.
Thank you.
All right. TNT fan Esben Hardenberg commented on Google Plus about our story about Bang & Olufsen's BioSound Moment System, which has a wooden touchpad-like surface and also an iPad-like circle they call the Mood Wheel. I mentioned in that conversation about how I like tech that integrates wood, like the wood-backed Moto X. And here's what he wrote to us. He wrote, with regard to your love for wooden technology, there's a word for that, technobiophilia, a word coined by Sue Thomas. Also, Bang & Olufsen was actually the reason why Apple did the iPod wheel in the first place. Thanks always for a great show. Did you know that, Christina Warren? I didn't know that Bang & Olufsen came out with essentially the iPod click wheel before Apple did.
I did not. I was not aware of that. Although I guess now looking, I was aware of some of the predecessors to some of the Dieter Rams inspired stuff, but no, I was not aware of that. But that's pretty cool. Yeah, very cool. And we have a few updates for you. I complained on yesterday's show about the horrible quality of video on Facebook, but as we reported yesterday on Tech News Tonight, Facebook has acquired a company called Quickfire Networks, which should eventually improve the quality of videos posted on Facebook while still enabling quick downloads. Uber hit a major speed bump in China. The government's transport ministry has banned taxi hailing apps like Uber as well as Chinese competitors. The government had been investigating Uber since December over improper licensing, and that is a pretty major setback. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Polly Sorensen in Denmark, who posted this picture on Twitter. Apparently, Polly watches the show in stereo. I guess there's a giant screen for each eyeball. That's the way to do it. How do you watch or listen to TNT? Just record a video or take a picture of your setup and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we'll find it. That is the Tech News Today. Christina Warren, what are you working on these days, and where can people follow your work? Well, you can find me at Mashable.com. I'm just kind of, been editing a bunch of CES stuff and kind of doing some end of year things. Actually, one thing that I found today that was actually pretty cool is that if you do a who is on any French domain, Je suis Charlie is spelled out in ASCII. And so I'm about to publish a story about that, which is kind of cool. That is cool.
Thank you for breaking that story on the show. Appreciate it. That's an awesome cause. And you see a lot of people adding support, including on Google.com. So that is a very cool thing. Thank you so much, Christina. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on Stitcher. That's a great place to subscribe. Or you can choose another way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. You can also follow us on Twitter. Tech News Today TV is our Twitter name. And please send us your thoughts and opinions to TNT@twit.tv or call 260-TNT-SHOW and leave a message. Also, don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight right here on the Twit Network. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Monday.